Dear Mark Stonfritz, Excellencies, Honorable Mr. Ambassador Bakota, dear Professor Ali Jalali, dear guests from the Academy for Cultural Diplomacy, honorable ladies and gentlemen. For me, it's really a tremendous pleasure to have the opportunity to be here with you in the Croatian embassy. And firstly, I want to convey my gratitude to you, Honorable Ambassador. It's really a pleasure to be here in the Croatian embassy. As you all know, Croatia is the newest member of the European Union, but I can assure you Croatia is a very important partner, especially for Germany, and it's a very active partner within the European Union. It's not the biggest country of the European Union, but it's a very important partner for Germany, especially a key anchor partner at the Western Balkans and a very important member of the European Union. I want to thank you, Mark, very much for hosting this outstanding conference here in Berlin. So I want to convey my welcome to all of you. It's really a pleasure for us and an honor for us in Germany to be the host country of this very important Congress, which deals with topics of democracy, of rule of law, and especially of peace. And 2 years ago, it would have been unimaginable that a brutal and horrible war occurs in the middle of Europe, that a country like Ukraine is invaded by its neighbor, by Putin and his military authorities. And I think this event, which started on the 24th of February last year, shows us that living in a democracy, living in peace, in freedom, and having the possibility to make benefit of your personal liberties, it's not for sure, it's not granted. And you have to fight for your possibilities which are enabled by a democracy. And in our times, 70% of the world population live in countries which are not in the format of a democracy. 70% of the world population lives in countries which are led by a hybrid form of government, or even worse, in autocracies or in dictatorships. So when you take the globe and count together all the countries which have a democracy like Croatia has, like Germany has, you end by about 45 countries on the whole globe. So the majority of our world population and the majority of our countries on our globe are not democracies. They are not countries in which rule of law is granted, in which the personal liberties are granted. And so I'm deeply convinced that in our times, in actual times, the benefits of a democracy must be advocated. Even in Germany, we have an increasing number of persons in our population which are not sure that it's clear that there is a tremendous advantage to live in a democracy. We have a struggle of different systems within our Western world. So certainly living in a dictatorship, living in an authoric country has certain advantages, especially with regard to dynamic of decisions. So, but I'm deeply convinced there is no better way of living than living in a democracy, living in peace and in freedom, and especially our relationship to the People's Republic of China now is very intensively discussed in German politics. Certainly, on the one hand, China is a very important partner, especially with regard to our trading relations. On the other hand, certainly China is a very intensive competitor, but with regard to some aspects, China is also a systematic rival. And so we have to discuss with our population, with our people, the advantages of a democracy. As I said, it's not seen for sure, and it's not seen as granted that it's automatically better to live in a democracy or in a country which provides personal liberties and freedom and peace than living in an authoric country or in emerging countries which do not rely on rule of law and on democracy. So I'm deeply convinced that the German democracy isn't perfect. Perhaps you heard about the decision of our Federal Constitutional Court, which was published yesterday evening, and I think it's a good signal. I haven't expected, to be honest, this decision of our Federal Constitutional Court. It was with regard to the need in the Parliament to negotiate and to discuss a new regulation, a new draft bill. And our Federal Constitutional Court yesterday said that at least there must be a time frame of 2 weeks for an MP, for a member of Parliament, to be able not only to read the new draft bill, but to discuss it with the colleagues, to discuss it in the committee, to discuss it in the plenary. And I think this decision, certainly our actual government isn't happy about this decision, published yesterday evening. And as I said, I haven't expected this decision because the way of dealing, it's a very specific draft bill with regard to the renewal and the need to renew fossil energies and fossil warming the house. But it's not important. The subject of the draft bill isn't the most important thing of yesterday's decision. I think this decision yesterday strengthened the parliamentarian rights. It strengthened the rights of the individual MPs. And so I'm deeply convinced that we must discuss these important issues of strengthening our democracy, of pushing forward the idea of rule of law, of personal liberties, of freedom and peace, not only in other continents, but even in our own country. And I want to thank you very much, because you are very important executive opinion builders in your home country. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank the Academy for Cultural Diplomacy very much for hosting this event, for hosting this conference, and to enable us all to discuss these important issues. As I said, we live in a time of upheavals. We live in a time of a lot of concerns. My perception, not only in my constituency, but in the whole country, in Germany, is that a lot of people are very much concerned about their future, about the security of their jobs, about the question if the next generation will be better off than the actual generation. So these are very important discussions. And with regard to these discussions and to these concerns, I'm deeply convinced that it is very important to make clear, in order to secure the personal liberties, to secure beginning from the jobs to the security of the families, it's important to strengthen democracy. Because, as I said, the the convincing arguments and the appealing arguments for democracy, for personal liberties, are not so self-explaining anymore as they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And I'm deeply convinced that the platform of living in a democracy, in a country which provides rule of law, personal liberties, is the best platform for the society, but also for each individual. We live not only in very challenging times, not only in very uprising times, in very dynamic times, but I think these actual times also provide a lot of potentials and a lot of chances. And such an academy for cultural diplomacy as we have here is very important, very necessary to make it clear in order to spread out these important ideas of democracy, of rule of law, and of personal liberties. So I want to thank again you, Mr. Ambassador Pakota, very much for hosting this outstanding event. And as I said, Croatia, for me, is the best example for a rather small country, but as I said, a very dynamic and a very important country to manage this shift from being a part of the former so-called Warsaw Pact, which was a format of satellite countries of the former Soviet Union. And you changed from former Yugoslavia now to a democratic country. And I think this is the best example for a successful change. And so I think there couldn't be a better embassy here in Berlin to host this outstanding and this very high-standing conference. Again, thank you very much for hosting this conference. Thank you very much for taking part in this very important conference. And I hope you enjoy your visit, your stay here in Germany. And I already wish you a safe trip home. And I hope we have the chance to continue our discussions and to meet again in Berlin or in other cities or in other countries. I want to provide again and to convey again my best wishes to all of you, especially personal health and God's sake. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Meyer. And if it's okay, we would love to have the opportunity to engage a few questions or comments from the audience. So if possible, you could come back to the podium, just because we're recording it, just because of the microphone would be ideal. And then as always, if you could raise your hands, any comments, questions, please introduce yourself also briefly, and then we can come back to Mr. Meyer. I see one hand there. Could you please stand?
Hello, I'm Stephan from Afghanistan. Thank you so much for your presentation, sir. My question is that if most of the people are not in favor of democracy, and how can we implement democracy if most of the people, majority, are not in favor of it? So for me, democracy is the most important thing. Everywhere it should be implemented, so everybody can raise their voice. So the problem with democracy is that if everybody has the right to raise their voice, so many people who are in high position, they can lose their position. So what should be done in that case? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very important question. And I just want to stress out that in my eyes, the most convincing argument for a democracy are stable and I would say successful democracies. So I know especially in a country, I only had once the chance to visit your marvelous country, the country of Afghanistan, and certainly mistakes were made by the Western countries in the way to deal with the Afghans in the way to deal with the challenges in Afghanistan. And I'm convinced that the wrong attitude or the wrong way would be to come from outside and to say, now you have to implement democracy, you have to implement rule of law, and then everything is okay. I think it must be demanded and it must be approved by the people itself. And as I said, I think the most convincing argument for democracies are successful democracies. And to be honest, we are in certain struggles now. I have the discussions with my constituents and with other persons in Germany now who complain about the very intensive bureaucracy in Germany, about the very long durations of applications, it lasts a long time to build a new airport, it lasts a long time to build a new railway or a motorway. So we are not so competitive anymore with regard to other countries, for instance, like the People's Republic of China or Brazil or South Africa. They passed by with regard to the way of dealing with such issues like investments in a very fast way. And so I'm convinced the best way is in order to be very appealing as a democracy, to have a stable, successful democracy, to concentrate in order to focus on the core of the society. Now we also have the perception in Germany that our society is polarizing. In some way it's also radicalizing. And I think now it must be the main goal and the main objective of all the democratic parties in Germany to strengthen the middle of our society. I think that's very important too. I think democracy will only be wished by other peoples if they see that there is a personal benefit from living in a democracy. If only a small part of the society benefits from a democracy, I think the majority will say that's not the best way of living in. So I think their convincing arguments are much more important than to travel into another country and to implement a democracy a little bit by force. So that's the wrong attitude, to be honest.
Okay, let's continue. Please.
Thank you very much. I come from Malawi, a very small economy in Southern Africa, and we have very good relationship with the German government. You supported us when we lost 1,000 people this year due to Cyclone Freddy, which was a very devastating tropical cyclone. I'm very much interested when people talk about rule of law versus justice. At the same time, when we talk about law, are we talking about domestic law or international law? There's a reason I'm asking these questions. Many failed democracies have gone to the extent of blocking people from conducting peaceful protests because in their constitution there is a law that says you can't. We have countries that have used the law passed by their parliaments to say one person can stay in power for 30 years. And that's law in that country. And it's also a law if in that country they say we're not going to entertain LGBTI rights. All these are laws. And these people always say, no, we are within the constitution. So therefore we're being lawful. So there is legalized injustice. So why am I saying this? the rule of law, if not very well understood, can also lead to other people, misinterpreting it and building the very same, authoritarian regimes that we are trying to run away from. Museveni would not have been in power up to date if the Ugandan parliament did not pass a law that says you can keep ruling. Putin, I think, is the same. So maybe the focus should be, in terms of international law, to what extent can that law bite? So that countries that deliberately use domestic laws to stifle people's aspirations and rights should be brought to book. And that raises the question where even the preachers of this gospel, they don't believe in the International Criminal Court. USA is a very good example. More importantly for me is the issue of climate change action financing. What we see today is a multipolar world where China and fellow members in the BRICS, they're doing their own thing. Then there's the West, the global North. To what extent do you think with the world we are living in today, we could successfully collect resources, put them together to support countries that today are suffering from the devastating effects of climate change, which is generated in the global North, but felt in the global South. So these are the questions that we need to be looking at seriously. Do you think China and Russia and South Africa and others would come together with the US, Germany, for example, the UK, and say, oh yes, let's put our resources together? And China still says we can continue polluting because we are still a developing country. And nobody's talking about that. And then there is this within the same, which is going to make some of us feel like maybe the UN is not for all of us, it's just for the so-called global North. And even when countries from the global South, just because they're rich, they become global North, like Australia. And then those questions would be like, do we really have to be with these people? And that's why today, you see Russia, China, and South Africa doing joint military drills. And that becomes a concern for the West. But when USA and South Korea do the same, and China complains, that shouldn't be allowed. So these are some of the questions that we need to be dealing for us to have this trust among each other and say maybe this is the direction we should take. I think we have had rhetoric for a long time. Maybe it's time now that we started looking at substantive issues and practical solutions on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very instructive and very important contribution. And I just want to answer that. Unfortunately, I don't know Malawi. As Mark already said, in this legislative term, I'm a full member of the Committee for the Judiciary in the German Parliament, and being a member of this committee, I had the chance to travel this spring to Senegal and to Ghana, and I had the impression that firstly there is a tremendous interest in enhancing and fostering the ties between those countries, emerging markets, both countries, Senegal and Ghana, but these are only two examples of the very important continent of Africa, of enhancing and fostering the ties with the European Union and especially with Germany. And certainly countries like Turkey or especially the People's Republic of China are very active on the African continent. And I am deeply convinced the African continent is one of the most important parts of our globe with regard to the fact that the population of the 45 countries in Africa will double within the next 25 years. I think we have the obligation to focus more on the African continent. And I'm deeply convinced that with regard to this commitment, we have to to provide an approach on the same eye level. That's very important. I have the impression, as I said, I had the chance to visit two African countries this year. Firstly, these are very dynamic countries. Certainly, they have a lot of problems, a lot of challenges, especially with regard to their judicial system. As you said, certainly, when I talk about rule of law, I do not only talk about international law, I talk especially about domestic law. And certainly I know that there is sometimes a tremendous difference between the written law on the one hand and the execution of this law. Implementation of the law is the one hand, and living these regulations and executing these regulations is another topic. This is especially a topic with regard to the number of judges or the number of prosecutors. It's much less, especially in those two countries I visited a few months ago. So I think there is a tremendous interest in enhancing the ties with Germany, and certainly the politicians in those countries are not naive. Certainly they know that countries or governments from Turkey and from China are not the white knights. They do not come and they only spread out benefits for the people's sake. They have specific interests and very egoistic interests. And all the politicians I had the chance to talk with in Ghana and in Senegal said, certainly we are much more in favor of cooperating with you, with the European Union, with Germany, with Croatia, with France, but certainly we are in struggles. China and Turkey are investing a lot of money, but we know they are not naive. They know all the circumstances, and they know that countries like China and like Turkey want to exploit these the raw materials, the natural resources only, and I think we have to advocate for an alternative model. And so I'm deeply convinced that every federal government of Germany must concentrate more on Africa, but with regard, as I said, with regard to Afghanistan, not in the attitude that now the rich uncle from Germany or from France comes to Malawi or to Senegal or to Ghana and explains the politicians and the entrepreneurs how to do business, how to develop a competitive law, but we have to deal with those countries on the same eye level, because we want to create win-win situations for both, and that must be the tremendous difference to countries like Turkey or like China. They do not want to create win-win situations for both sides. Our goal, our objective must be to create win-win situations for both, for the peoples of Malawi, of Ghana, of Senegal, but certainly on the other hand, also your European Union could benefit from enhancing cooperation with regard to securing our needs for raw materials, for seldom raw materials, but on the other hand, as you also mentioned, in our common fight against the global warming and to fight the climate change. I think that must be a common goal of the African countries as well of the European countries. And as I said, I think overall there must be our approach, create win-win situations for both sides.
An additional question or comments? This is your opportunity, don't be shy. We've had a big range of topics so far.
If I may add something. This is Dr. Zainab Yunus from the British University. I would assume if we want to approach ties, because I come from an academic background, and I was talking yesterday about the Erasmus Plus program that were run by the EU regarding the Egyptian country. And we have a lot of Erasmus Plus program basically we have one program with our university, the British University in Egypt, but it's basically with Poland and with parts in Latvia and so on. So if we can extend those kinds of Erasmus Plus programs in the Egyptian community related to German universities, because there is also an increasing trend of German education in Egypt, and that's basically developing. I'm speaking about the British University, which is my home university where I work, but it's also a kind of an overview of cultural diplomacy, so we have to speak about everything. So the Erasmus Plus program has to, I mean, if it's run by the EU, it has to run more and more, and to invade more and more educational institutions. So this is basically my comment, and this would strengthen relationships on both grounds, because the younger generation want to be exposed more to internationalization and to this kind of type of educational exchange.
Thank you very much. I totally agree with you. Thank you very much for your important contribution. I'm a very big supporter and fan of the Erasmus Plus program, and certainly I promote and I push forward all the efforts and ideas to enhance and to enlarge this very important program. Unfortunately, as Mark already said, I had the honor to chair the all-party friendship group in the German federal parliament, the Bundestag, on the UK for 7 years, and unfortunately, when I was the chairperson, they had the referendum in 2016, and they unfortunately Great Britain lost and left the European Union. So, for instance, it's not possible anymore to conduct any programs with the UK within the Erasmus Plus program. But certainly, as you said, you are from Egypt. Egypt is also a very important partner. It's the second biggest country on the African continent, and I think half of the population of Egypt now is living at, or even worse, under the existential standard of living. So in economic terms, Egypt is in a very tremendous challenge, and so certainly it must be our interest, as everyone knows, Egypt is not only a very big country with 110 million inhabitants. On the other hand, certainly it's in the middle of the crisis banana between Morocco and the Middle East. So it's a very stable partner for us. Certainly, also for Israel, there is a so. With regard to a lot of topics and aspects, Egypt is a very important partner for the European Union, and it's in our interest that we stabilize Egypt. And I think providing education to Egypt, for instance, with regard to the British University in Cairo, it's a very important contribution. And so I'm very open to push forward these ideas to enhance the cooperation, and especially under the framework of the Erasmus Plus program.
So there's another hand. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm Nicholas Khatiashvili, representing Parliament of Georgia. First of all, thank you for your support toward Georgia, towards our sovereignty, territorial integrity, and our European Union integration path. Also, thank you for reflecting Georgia in your foreign policy strategy for the first time. My question is that now we're witnessing a transformation and creation of a new geopolitical reality amidst the war in Ukraine. So, in this new reality, we see that the role of Black Sea region is rising and increasing for Europe. So, from your perspective, how do you see the role of Georgia in the Black Sea, the future of the Black Sea security and European security as well? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also, this is a very important question and remark, especially with regard to the challenges Georgia has to face at the border, especially to Russia. And with regard to the events in 2008, we all know that Putin does not only has the interest to invade the Ukraine. Everyone knows that his plans and his deliberations go further. And so it's also in the interest certainly of the Georgian people, but it's the same with Egypt or with other countries. It's also especially in the interest of the European Union, of the Western countries, to stabilize Georgia and to deliver a clear perspective for Georgia to strengthen the ties with NATO, to strengthen the ties with the European Union. And it's in our it's one of our main focus to strengthen the cooperation with Georgia, but also I don't want to neglect Moldova. It's also one of the key objects of Putin and his government. So I just can assure you that we won't leave Georgia alone. The opposite will be the case. We will do everything in order to support Georgia, to support Moldova, and to strengthen the ties between the European Union and these very important countries in the neighborhood of Russia.
We have a question from a member of the faculty of the Institute of Cultural Diplomacy, Ambassador Karl-Erik Norman, who's former Swedish ambassador, and also the Secretary General of the European Cultural Parliament. Karl-Erik.
Well, two comments, one on democracy and one on peace. Some 12 years ago, I wrote a book about the crisis of democracy. Some people question, is there really a crisis? I'm not a prophet, but I'm afraid in the last 5 years, we have seen that there's really a crisis. We have an institute in Stockholm, the so-called IDEA, the International Democracy Institute, and they are coming with an annual report which is establishing that we have an increase year by year of authoritarian, or as you said, hybrid regimes. And democracy is losing ground by the year. And here is the big challenge in a very modern world, in a very digitalized world, and for the people, and I would say particularly for education. Because I have a friend who is a political science professor in Oxford, and he has defined democracy in the following way. Democracy is the art of carrying disappointment. It doesn't sound very positive, does it? But after all, democracy always takes a lot of compromises, which also means that in an election campaign, you make promises, or half promises, or whatever. And then you have come to power, well, people see you have not fulfilled your promises. And that, of course, may lead to disappointment. Another thing which we all know, particularly if we are in Germany or in Sweden, in Europe, we know that democracy takes a strong civil society, and it takes a strong infrastructure of institutions. And what are these institutions? They are institutions directly working under the government, or they are half independent and so on. But what people are sitting there? Civil servants, sometimes so-called. And what do we call them with a less nice word? We call them bureaucrats. And what is with the position, let's say, in people's minds today? You mentioned Germany, bureaucrats and so on, but we have to live with a certain amount of bureaucracy in order for justice or rule of law or whatever legislation has been taken to be implemented in the right way and not just push like this. A dictatorship is more efficient from the idea to the implementation because it doesn't have to ask questions. But democracy has to ask all these questions, and that is the problem with the democracy. And I think we can, particularly with a word of social media, where you have hate speech against politicians, and when you ask for action now, tomorrow, and not in 2 years' time, and so on, to waiting for a commission to present its report, etc., etc. So it takes a lot of patience. And patience is not the key word in today's world, as a matter of fact. And in order to achieve this kind of patience, I think we have to make a very strong point about this in our education system. Perhaps even sometimes in school, in kindergarten, in school, and even at the university, refraining from the quick news of your phone or the digital world, and have a piece of paper and a pen and take notes of what the other person says and so on. So that is about democracy. Excuse me for extending the time here, but on peace I will be a little bit quicker. Sweden used to be a non-aligned country, a neutral country. I was asked by a German television channel, Phoenix, in April last year, what about Sweden's neutrality, because Sweden had decided to join NATO. What is your view, Ambassador Norman? They asked me. Well, I said, well, up till the 24th of February 22, I was completely convinced that it was right to stay neutral. It would contribute to peace and security in the northern sphere of Europe. But with Putin's aggression, the situation is completely changed. Zeitwende, as the Bundeskanzler says. This means the rules for peace can also change. The rules how to promote peace and security can change overnight, which they did. And somehow we will have to live up to this, and hopefully even President Erdogan will one day allow Sweden to join NATO. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't want to comment on your very important remarks, Honorable Ambassador. Unfortunately, until now I hadn't the chance to read your book, but I will do.
I'm afraid it's in Swedish.
It's not translated in English?
No,
okay. So unfortunately, I don't speak Swedish. But I totally agree with you. Democracies are in a crisis, and certainly democracies lead to frustration and to disappointment. But I'm deeply convinced dictatorships and autocratic countries lead to much more disappointment. And that's the tremendous difference. There is not one form of government which does not cause any disappointment. Certainly, there are one of the core aspects and elements of a democracy are compromises. In Germany, we are used to coalition governments. I'm quite sure that in the near and in the far future, there won't be the chance for one single party in Germany to have the majority of the votes. So compromises are one of the core elements of a democracy. And certainly compromises create more efforts than ruling a country by a dictatorship. If you would have a good dictator, certainly this would be the best model. But on the other hand, the past showed that unfortunately there were hardly any good dictators. The opposite is the case, and so I totally agree with you that we must start in the schools, in the kindergarten. Education plays a very important role with regard to promoting the idea of democracy. But on the other hand, we also must make clear that democracies create disappointment and they create efforts. It's not easy to live in a democracy. And I'm not against bureaucracy. Certainly bureaucracy is needed in order to provide rule of law, to provide the possibility to sue another, to sue also certainly authorities, and to complain against decisions from authorities. But I'm also convinced that democracies can become more dynamic. It's not granted, it's not set forever that our bureaucracy is so tremendous, overwhelming, like in Germany. I can't speak about Sweden, but at least I can speak a little bit about Germany. And I think not touching the core aspects of democracy, of rule of law, of personal liberties, it's also possible to make our country more dynamic and more competitive. It's not, as I said, it's not granted by God that we must stay in this system as we have it now.